Delegates, a very good morning to everybody. Excellencies, dear delegates, a very good morning to everybody. I am delighted to open the 22nd ISS Shangri-La Dialogue, Asia's premier defense summit. And I would like to begin by thanking Prime Minister Lawrence Wong for having hosted us last night for the opening dinner and keynote address. And in the keynote address, President Macron of France spoke about his vision for partnership between Asia and Europe and the need for consistency and credibility in policy. And he spoke about strategic autonomy as a means to accept and take on responsibility for addressing today's security challenges. And if I look across the room, it's fantastic to see so many delegations here at the dialogue and the many defense ministers who will be engaging in defense diplomacy. And in a minute, we will begin the first plenary session on the United States' new ambitions for Indo-Pacific security. A reminder to all that the speeches delivered during the plenary sessions of the Shangri-La Dialogue, as well as the answers given to questions, but also the questions themselves, are on the record. If you wish to take the floor to ask a question or make a comment, you have a microphone at your seat to do so. You will need your delegate badge to activate the microphone, and two steps are involved here. It's very simple. First, you need to put your badge into the slot on the right-hand side of the microphone set, and second, you need to press the button to turn your microphone on. Once your microphone is on, a green light will come up, and your name is added to my list here on the stage here. When your microphone is green, it is not a hot mic. When I select you from the list, and I turn your microphone on here, it will turn red, and then you have an opportunity to ask your question. I encourage everyone to keep those questions short and crisp to generate meaningful answers and to help us get to as many of them as we can. So insert your badge, press the button, you're in the queue. And now I'm delighted to turn to Pete Hegseth, the Secretary of Defense of the United States. Many of you will know that the Secretary of Defense Hegseth, since taking office, has traveled to the region in March, and it is great that he is back for the Shangri-La Dialogue to speak about U.S. ambitions and priorities for the Indo-Pacific. Mr. Secretary, we're truly honored to have you here at the 22nd ISS Shangri-La Dialogue. The podium is yours.
Well, good morning. It is great to be in Singapore. And Bastian, thank you very much for the warm welcome. The Shangri-La Dialogue is an important forum to bring together defense leaders from across the Indo-Pacific and the world. And I want to thank II and SS for hosting us this morning. As was mentioned, I'm certainly proud to be back in the Indo-Pacific for the second time as the Secretary of Defense. And I'm going to keep coming back and back and back again. You're stuck with me. But it's not just me. America is proud to be back in the Indo-Pacific, and we're here to stay. The United States is an Indo-Pacific nation. We have been since the earliest days of our republic. We will continue to be an Indo-Pacific nation with Indo-Pacific interests for generations to come. And under President Trump's leadership, the United States is committed to achieving peace through strength. That starts with deterring aggression around the world and here in the Indo-Pacific, here in our priority theater, here with you, our allies, and our partners. The United States stands ready to work with any country that is willing to step up and preserve the global and regional peace that we all hold dear. Your presence here today sends a strong message about our shared purpose, our shared commitment to peace, our shared dedication to a free and open Indo-Pacific. So this morning, I'd like to share the U.S. Defense Department's vision for the Indo-Pacific. You see, my job is to create and maintain decision space for President Trump, not to purport to make decisions on his behalf. And in doing that, I'm joined today by two great military leaders from the United States military. Our chairman of the Joint Chiefs, Dan Raisin Kane, is here with me, a great partner who understands how to take a global look, globally integrate American interests and American power regionally and internationally. And of course, we're joined by our Indo-Pacific Commander, Admiral Sam Paparo, America's fighting general in the Pacific. Admiral, thanks for being here. It is our job, the three of us and the entire Defense Department, to keep our military strong and create options. President Trump was elected to apply America First on the world stage. You know, getting a chance to watch him firsthand in the Oval Office and around the world is incredibly fortunate to have an American president with the combination of being a peace seeker and a strong leader. President Trump has the unique ability to make possible things that seem impossible, moving the Overton window. He's the ultimate deal maker. And to that end, from day one, President Trump gave me a clear mission at the Defense Department: achieve peace through strength. To accomplish this mission, our overriding objectives have been equally clear: restore the warrior ethos, rebuild our military, and reestablish deterrence. And it starts with a warrior ethos. All of us in this profession of arms understand that humans are far more important than hardware. So we're focused on lethality, meritocracy, accountability, standards, readiness, and warfighting. We respect human nature, hard training, and the lessons of history. Our combat formations will be trained and skilled. Our standards will be high and unwavering. If you can do the job, you'll be in our formation. If you can't, you are not. Colorblind, gender neutral, merit-based. It's as simple as that. That is restoring the warrior ethos, and our troops in America are responding to it. Morale, recruiting, retention, readiness, training capabilities, all rapidly increasing thanks to President Trump's back-to-basics approach. Our second priority is rebuilding the military. We're equipping American warfighters with the most advanced capabilities so that we remain the strongest and most lethal fighting force in the world. President Trump is spending, for the first time ever, over $1 trillion next year to do this, a 13% increase in American defense spending. The Golden Dome for America, our new sixth-generation fighter, the F-47, our new stealth bomber, the B-21, new submarines, destroyers, hypersonics, drones, you name it, it's all part of it. The best military equipment in the world. We're reviving our defense industrial base and investing in our shipyards. We're rapidly fueling emerging technologies that will help us remain the world leader for generations to come. We are stronger, yet more agile than ever before. When our opponents know that our military is armed with the most capable weapon systems, wielded by skilled warriors with the will to prevail, they are less likely to challenge us on the battlefield, which is the point. This leads to the third objective, which is reestablishing deterrence. Across 4 years of deferred maintenance under the Biden administration, the world saw, unfortunately, a feckless and weak America. An invasion of 21 million illegals on our southern border, Russian aggression in Ukraine after what had happened under the previous Democrat administration in 2014 in Crimea, Islamist terror on October 7th in Israel, a humiliating and deadly retreat in Afghanistan, an enriched and emboldened Iran, a Chinese spy balloon flying over our country, and a Secretary of Defense that was AWOL for a week. That ends now. Not anymore. We are reestablishing deterrence around the world, but credible deterrence starts at home, like our historic Golden Dome for America, and it starts at our borders. Border security for us and for all of you is national security. So we have surged troops to our southern border, and we'll have 100% operational control of there soon enough. We spent 2 decades patrolling other borders. It's time to prioritize the defense of our own. We're also increasing security in the Western Hemisphere and taking back the Panama Canal from malign Chinese influence. It is key terrain, after all. China did not build that canal. We did. And we will not allow China to weaponize it or control it. Deterrence starts in our own backyard. But beyond our borders and beyond our neighborhood, we are reorienting toward deterring aggression by communist China. We'll talk a little bit more about that in a minute. But elsewhere and around the world, we are engaging with, enabling, and empowering our allies, sometimes with tough love, but love nonetheless. We're pushing our allies in Europe to own more of their own security, to invest in their defense, things that are long overdue. We still believe the N in NATO stands for North Atlantic, and that our European allies should maximize their comparative advantage on the continent. And thanks to President Trump, they are stepping up. An alliance cannot be ironclad if in reality or perception it is seen as one-sided. That is changing, and that is very important. And as our allies share the burden, we can increase our focus on the Indo-Pacific, our priority theater. You see, here in the Indo-Pacific, our futures are bound together. The prosperity and security of the American people are linked to those of your people. We share your vision of peace and stability, of prosperity and security. And we are here to stay. And as a matter of fact, we are here this morning, and somebody else isn't. But for a generation, the United States ignored this region. We became distracted by open-ended wars, regime change, and nation building. I had a front row seat as a soldier in Iraq and Afghanistan. These costly diversions lacked clearly defined goals and were not tied to vital and core American interests. President Trump is changing that. We are not making the same mistakes, not this generation and not now. We are done with that approach. We're focused on delivering for the American people, on safeguarding their security, on protecting their economic interests, and on using common sense to preserve peace in the Indo-Pacific. You know, standing here in Singapore, I think this approach lines quite well with the pragmatic style of Singapore's legendary Prime Minister, Lee Kuan Yew. Across 3 decades, he built this country into one of the world's most important hubs of finance and innovation. Like the late Prime Minister, President Trump's approach is grounded in common sense and national interests, built on a willingness to work with others while respecting mutual self-interest, and informed by an understanding of military strength, but shaped by a preference for engaging on the basis of commerce and sovereignty, not war. These 2 historic men share a willingness to challenge old ways of doing things that no longer make sense. We refuse to accept any paradigm that makes conflict inevitable. As President Trump said in Riyadh, a historic speech in Saudi Arabia, America does not have or seek permanent enemies. Under President Trump's leadership, we are applying this common sense approach to defense here in the Indo-Pacific and throughout the world. And we believe the results speak for themselves. President Trump is leading European allies to step up in their own defense, as I mentioned. He is striking new, fairer trade deals that protect Americans while providing a lasting and secure basis for commerce. Not to mention resilient, anti-fragile, and reliable supply chains for our and your defense needs. He's also rebalancing security and defense arrangements with key allies in the region. This enables all of us to benefit from the peace and stability that comes with a lasting and strong American presence here in the Indo-Pacific. These benefits, they only multiply when our allies and partners are also strong. As President Trump also said in Riyadh, the United States is not interested in the moralistic and preachy approach to foreign policy of the past. We're not here to pressure other countries to embrace or adopt policies or ideologies. We're not here to preach to you about climate change or cultural issues. We're not here to impose our will on you. We are all sovereign nations. We should be able to choose the future we want to build. We respect you, your traditions, and your militaries. And we want to work with you where our shared interests align for peace and prosperity. On this sure foundation of mutual interest and common sense, we will build and strengthen our defense partnerships to preserve peace and increase prosperity. But a threat gathers. As we all know, strength and security underpin peace and enable prosperity. And our common sense approach to achieving security, achieving peace through strength, requires seeing things crystal clearly. It requires confronting obvious truth about the threats that we face in the Indo-Pacific, and it requires meeting those threats with a very real sense of urgency. So before we get to those hard truths, and to make sure to our friends in the press our words are not misconstrued as they so often are, let me begin by saying we do not seek conflict with Communist China. We will not instigate nor seek to subjugate or humiliate. President Trump and the American people have an immense respect for the Chinese people and their civilization. But we will not be pushed out of this critical region. And we will not let our allies and partners be subordinated and intimidated. China seeks to become a hegemonic power in Asia, no doubt. It hopes to dominate and control too many parts of this vibrant and vital region. Through its massive military buildup and growing willingness to use military force to achieve its goals, including gray zone tactics and hybrid warfare, China has demonstrated that it wants to fundamentally alter the region's status quo. We cannot look away, and we cannot ignore it. China's behavior toward its neighbors and the world is a wake-up call, and an urgent one. China uses its vast and sophisticated cyber capabilities to steal technology and attack critical infrastructure in your countries and in the United States as well. These actions not only compromise our countries, but endanger the lives of our citizens. In the South China Sea, China harasses its neighbors, many of which are here in the room today. China seeks to intimidate you in your own waters. We've all seen the videos and pictures of water cannons and ship-to-ship collisions and illegal boardings at sea. We're also seeing the illegal seizing and militarizing of lands in the South China Sea. These actions reveal a lack of respect for neighbors, and they challenge sovereignty, freedom of navigation, and overflight. We are watching very closely China's destabilizing actions. And any unilateral attempt to change the status quo in the South China Sea and the first island chain by force or coercion is unacceptable. Every day, you see it, China's military harasses Taiwan. These activities have been paired with China's rapid military modernization and buildup, including huge investments in nuclear weapons, hypersonics, and amphibious assault capabilities. it has to be clear to all that Beijing is credibly preparing to potentially use military force to alter the balance of power in the Indo-Pacific. We know, it's public, that Xi has ordered his military to be capable of invading Taiwan by 2027. The PLA is building the military needed to do it, training for it every day, and rehearsing for the real deal. Admiral Paparo has spoken very clearly about this on multiple occasions. Again, to be clear, any attempt by Communist China to conquer Taiwan by force would result in devastating consequences for the Indo-Pacific and the world. There's no reason to sugarcoat it. The threat China poses is real, and it could be imminent. We hope not, but it certainly could be. Facing these threats, we know that many countries are tempted by the idea of seeking both economic cooperation with China and defense cooperation with the United States. Now, that is a geographic necessity for many. But beware the leverage that the CCP seeks with that entanglement. Economic dependence on China only deepens their malign influence and complicates our defense decision space during times of tension. Nobody knows what China will ultimately do, but they are preparing. And therefore, we must be ready as well. Urgency and vigilance is our only option at the Department of Defense with our allies, because the United States, especially under President Trump, does not seek war. We do not seek to dominate or strangle China, to encircle or provoke. We do not seek regime change, nor will we instigate or disrespect a proud and historic culture. We will be ready, but we will not be reckless. Instead, we seek peace. But we must ensure that China cannot dominate us or our allies and partners. Maintaining the status quo requires strength. That's just a rational, common sense goal that we should all be able to live with. President Trump has also said that Communist China will not invade Taiwan on his watch. So our goal is to prevent war, to make the cost too high, and peace the only option. And we will do this with a strong shield of deterrence forged together with you, America's great allies and defense partners. Together, we will show what it means to execute peace through strength. In many ways, seen and unseen, overt and covert. But if deterrence fails, and if called upon by my commander-in-chief, we are prepared to do what the Department of Defense does best, to fight and win decisively. And as I've said many times before, and it's important for this room to hear today and all the world, America first certainly does not mean America alone, especially alongside so many of our allies, model allies like Poland, Israel, and the Gulf states, the Baltic states. And it does not mean ignoring the world. As you have all seen, President Trump is committed to a lasting and durable peace in Ukraine. And with an unwavering commitment to ensure Iran never has nuclear weapons, he seeks a strong and verifiable negotiated deal. The other option is regional war, or worse. As we shift our focus to this region, and as Europe steps up and takes greater ownership for its own security, President Trump and I will be counting on you, on this room, our allies and partners, to be force multipliers for peace alongside the United States. We ask, and indeed we insist, that our allies and partners do their part on defense. Sometimes that means having uncomfortable and tough conversations. Partners owe it to each other to be honest and to be realistic, as many of you have been with me in the past few days, and I with you. This is the essence of a pragmatic, common sense defense policy. But you will also see that we are and will remain loyal to our allies and partners. The military-to-military relationship between many of our countries goes back decades, and in some cases, centuries. In fact, the only way to ensure lasting alliances and partnerships is to make sure that each side does its part and sees the benefit. We will stand with you and work alongside you to deter Chinese aggression. Each day, together, creating more and more dilemmas and complications should China want to act, should they decide to overturn the status quo. More dilemmas, more complications, more questions, more concerns, more variables, more reasons to say it's not worth it. No one should doubt America's commitment to our Indo-Pacific allies and partners. We will continue to wrap our arms around our friends and find new ways to work together, not only our treaty allies here, but also our key defense partners in ASEAN and across the Indo-Pacific. For example, look no further than to our growing defense relationship with India, where we pass new milestones by the day, from shared ventures of our defense industries to the increased operational coordination and interoperability between our two militaries. I urge all of our allies and partners to seize this moment with us. Our defense spending must reflect the dangers and threats that we face today. Because deterrence doesn't come on the cheap. Just ask the American taxpayer. Time is of the essence. We must step up and move out with urgency. And it's hard to believe a little bit, after some trips to Europe, that I'm saying this, but thanks to President Trump, Asian allies should look to countries in Europe as a newfound example. NATO members are pledging to spend 5% of their GDP on defense, even Germany. So it doesn't make sense for countries in Europe to do that while key allies in Asia spend less on defense in the face of an even more formidable threat, not to mention North Korea. Ultimately, a strong, resolute, and capable network of allies and partners is our key strategic advantage. China envies what we have together, and it sees what we can collectively bring to bear on defense. But it's up to all of us to ensure that we live up to that potential by investing. U.S. allies in the Indo-Pacific can and should quickly upgrade their own defenses. President Trump said it himself last month in Riyadh and will never hesitate to wield American power swiftly and decisively if necessary. That is reestablishing deterrence. So we're doing this here in the Indo-Pacific in three distinct ways. And forgive me as I go into a little bit of detail. First, by improving our forward force posture. Second, by helping allies and partners strengthen their defense capabilities. And third, by rebuilding defense industrial bases. So first, the Defense Department is prioritizing forward-postured, combat-credible forces in the Western Pacific to deter by denial along the first and second island chains. In my first trip to the Indo-Pacific in March, I traveled to the Philippines to meet with President Marcos and Secretary of National Defense Teodoro. While there, we announced our commitment to deploy more advanced deployment of Nemesis, a U.S. Marine Corps mobile anti-ship missile system, to the Philippines. The 3rd Marine Littoral Regiment, one of the U.S. military's most capable and lethal formations, exercised Nemesis along with our Philippine allies. Together, we deployed the system to the Batanes Islands on the Luzon Strait between the Philippines and Taiwan. This enhanced our interoperability and improved our readiness on cutting-edge platforms, where we need them and when we need them. We also announced that the U.S. Special Operations Forces and Philippine Marines are training together on complex landing scenarios in the Batanes Islands. This demonstrates that our forces can conduct high-end operations in the most challenging of environments. I also had a chance to visit Tokyo and meet with Prime Minister Ishiba and Defense Minister Nakatani. We announced that we're upgrading U.S. Forces Japan headquarters. This is about warfighting and deterrence, as well as common sense. Upgrading USFJ demonstrates the significant work of the U.S.-Japan alliance as it evolves to emerging threats. It also reflects the progress the alliance has made toward improving interoperability and strengthening Japan's capabilities. And this summer, the U.S. Army has plans to conduct its first ever live fire test of its mid-range capability system in Australia. This will be the first time that system is fired west of the international date line. The first time it's been tested on foreign soil. Deployments like this represent a commitment to the region, and there are many more planned. On the home front, the Golden Dome for America will protect the U.S. homeland against a catastrophic missile attack by adversaries. We will strengthen missile defenses for the U.S. homeland as we look for ways to improve regional missile defenses right here in the Indo-Pacific. We're also using regional integrated air and missile defense, and we're deploying several key missile defense technologies and data sharing partnerships with Japan and Australia, leveraging America's best-in-class technologies to strengthen regional air and missile defense architectures. Second, we're supporting allies and partners as they strengthen their own defense capabilities and capacity. We want to empower you as partners, not dependents, to work more capably with the United States. We're working to rapidly deliver the kinds of off-the-shelf, innovative, autonomous systems for which the American defense industry is renowned. It's why the department partnered with U.S. industry to launch the Maritime Security Consortium. This consortium will build and sustain maritime domain awareness to deliver real operational effects by employing unmanned aircrafts and vessels. These capabilities, delivered quickly and at a lower cost, give a cutting-edge advantage to the hands of warfighters and our defense partners in Southeast Asia. A critical part of working with our partners is increasing interoperability, learning how to sail, fly, and fight as one. This year's Balikatan exercise in the Philippines was the largest ever. In the South China Sea, we continue to conduct regular maritime activities alongside Australia, Japan, and the Philippines. We're also expanding our security partnership with India through robust military exercises like Tiger Triumph. And we're also amplifying cooperation within the Quad and other multilateral frameworks. Within the Quad, we're also leading an initiative called the Indo-Pacific Logistics Network, enabling Quad partners to leverage shared logistics capabilities in the Indo-Pacific. You know, they say rookies talk strategy, pros talk logistics. And we're grateful for the opportunity to train with all our allies in the region in other exercises like Talisman Sabre with Australia and Cobra Gold in Thailand. These exercises enhance our lethality while improving our readiness to respond at a moment's notice. And that was certainly put into practice last March with the Thai military in response to the earthquake there. Flying and sailing and operating together in peacetime ensures we are prepared for the unexpected. And third, we are revitalizing our defense industrial bases and reallocating resources toward the most lethal and effective capabilities. We're doing this because success of the warfighters requires it. It's one thing for an adversary to see multinational forces operating together in exercises. It's another thing entirely for that same country to see an integrated defense industrial base supporting those forces and standing ready to keep them in the fight. That's why we are pleased to endorse the Partnership for Indo-Pacific Industrial Resilience, also known as PIPER, a U.S.-initiated multilateral forum of 14 allies and partners working with industry, capital providers, and key non-governmental stakeholders to strengthen industrial resilience, expand our capacity, and accelerate deliveries. So today I'm proud to announce the first PIPER projects. The first project plans to establish repair capability and capacity for P-8 radar systems in Australia. It'll also enable Indo-Pacific allies and partners operating the aircraft, including New Zealand and the Republic of Korea, to repair aircraft within the region rather than relying on single repair sources in the continental United States. The second is a project that will develop standards for small unmanned aerial systems across the Indo-Pacific, identifying secure sources of production for their critical components and increasing global supply chain resilience for these essential systems. Similarly, we are working through our regional sustainment framework to do things like expand existing contracts for U.S. Army watercraft repair. The goal of this initiative is to bring in more providers and expand existing repair capability more broadly across the Indo-Pacific. We'll also use our allies' world-class ship repair capabilities to enhance the U.S. Navy's operational effectiveness to save taxpayers' money. These moves will strengthen regional resiliency by increasing access to repair capabilities in theater and reducing dependency on faraway supply chains. We're deepening our cooperation with Australia's Guided Weapons and Explosive Ordnance Enterprise with historic momentum and purpose. This work secures our technological edge and makes our munition supply chains resilient. In the last 2 months, we've reached an agreement for Australia to produce 155 millimeter ammunition and to assemble guided multiple launch rocket systems, or GMLRS. These steps enhance our readiness and facilitate upgrades to our collective defense industrial base. And we're working with India to co-produce equipment needed to deter aggression. And this includes negotiating an agreement to bring our industrial bases ever closer. Last month, we held our first ever U.S.-India industry government experts exchange to produce and field state-of-the-art autonomous systems as part of the U.S.-India Autonomous Systems Industry Alliance. So across the board, the United States, our allies, and our partners have made great progress in these and many other areas towards achieving peace through strength, but we have to move quickly, and we have no time to waste. So as I conclude, it is with sage leadership and strategic vision and a sense of urgency that Lee Kuan Yew turned Singapore into one of the world's great success stories. Many call it the Singapore miracle. That's what common sense policies can achieve. And that's precisely what President Trump's vision is all about. President Trump is a leader of peace, a man of peace, a force for peace. And together we will achieve that peace through strength, reestablishing deterrence, sharing our burdens, multiplying our strengths, reinforcing our great alliances, respecting our cultures, not starting wars, but preventing them, and building a better future for our nations, for our mutual benefit. During my last visit to the Indo-Pacific, I watched oil seep out from the wreckage of the USS Arizona at Pearl Harbor. I saw the rows of crosses marking the graves of over 17,000 American soldiers at the Manila American Cemetery in the Philippines, and had a chance to walk the black sandy beaches of Iwo Jima. In these hallowed places, you can't help but immediately feel connected to the past, to the warriors who went before us. They gave their all for me, for men and women they never knew, for freedom and for peace. So as we mark 80 years since the end of World War II, we owe it to today's warriors, to our citizens, as we put our citizens first and you put your citizens first. We owe it to them, to our children and our grandchildren, to preserve this peace. The motto of my first platoon, first one I led, was those who long for peace must prepare for war. And that's exactly what we're doing. We are preparing for war in order to deter war, to achieve peace through strength. And we look out in this room and we look to you, to our allies and to our partners to join us in this important work. Our time is now. The threats we face will not wait, and nor can we. Thank you, and Godspeed.
Mr. Secretary, thank you very much for what I think must rightly be described a major statement of policy and outlining the vision for the priority theater, as you called it, and offering everything from the overall ambition to the detail of how the U.S. Department of Defense under your leadership goes about this task. We have about 20 minutes now to discuss this further. We have already a long list of people seeking the floor. We won't get to everyone, I can already see that, because we're approaching 30 people wanting to ask you questions. But we'll take a few. I'll then return to you to offer some answers, and then we'll see whether we get a few more in after that. So let me start, please, with Susanna Patton from Australia and the Young Leaders Group. Susanna, your microphone is now live.
Thank you very much. Mr. Secretary, your speech focused on re-establishing deterrence and US prioritization of Asia. But just in the last 2 months, it's been reported that the US has moved a battalion of Patriot missiles from the Indo-PACOM AOR to the Middle East at significant logistical cost. And US Coast Guard cutters have been reassigned from Asia to the southern border of the United States. Can you please explain how these actions align with the goal you set out of making the Indo-Pacific the priority theatre?
Let me take a few more, Mr. Secretary, but so balance of commitments. The first question, and if I can then please get from India. Hold on, let me just go through my list here, and the ISS, Vipatrap Vikram Singh. Vipatrap.
Thank you. Secretary Hexket, could you speak to the Trump administration's position towards cyber operations, specifically whether the U.S. approach to the Indo-Pacific will involve an increase in hunt-forward operations? And as a second part to that, would the U.S. military be looking to take a more involved role in supporting Asia-Pacific states in developing their own cyber forces? Thank you.
Thank you very much. And we will take from the United States, Doug Greenlaw. Douglas?
Yes, Secretary, thank you for your pragmatic, common-sense policy and for noting the alignment with Singapore's great leaders. Previous administrations have articulated at this dialogue the vision to pivot to the Pacific, but it's been more rhetoric than action. What's different now, and do you have the resources to make this happen?
Okay, let me take maybe two more, and then I'll return to the Secretary to take some of these on. From Indonesia, Jasmine Afina. Jasmine.
Thank you very much. So I have a quick question on your remarks around off-the-shelf autonomous systems and their quick delivery. How do you ensure that their delivery and their deployment will be done in a responsible way and in a reliable way, and that the systems will actually be deployed with robust testing and evaluation, and to ensure that Indo-Pacific does not become a testing ground? Thank you.
Thank you very much. And let me take one more for this round from Ireland, but for these purposes, probably more important, from the Financial Times, Dimitri Sevastopoulou. Dimitri.
Thank you, Bastian. Secretary Hegseth, what role should European militaries play in the Indo-Pacific? And do you subscribe to the view that Europe should focus more on the Euro-Atlantic and leave the Indo-Pacific to the US and its allies in Asia?
Thank you very much. That's a lot to tackle, so I'll give you a few minutes to address those, and then we'll take a few more.
Well, the opening question is a very good one. It's a fair one on when an incoming administration comes into the world the way that it is, existing set of threats. I mentioned deferred maintenance, and as a result, never would and have not turned our back on existing relationships, existing responsibilities, existing threats. So when it comes to the very tailored operation we had against the Houthis, which easily could have expanded into something else if we did not maintain focus on what the end state was. Freedom of navigation was our goal from the beginning. We used unrelenting military force to execute that, provided capabilities in order to protect our troops and forces in the region in the process, which requires some trade-offs, but intentionally kept the scope narrow so that it didn't spiral into something bigger, and we could ensure we maintain combat power or other potentialities. We stand prepared to ensure that Iran does not get a nuclear bomb. We're committed to peace. We believe that's the most fruitful process, and there have been great signs. But it would be irresponsible for the Department of Defense not to posture to protect our forces and our allies and our bases in the region. So that requires trade-offs in the short term. But that's our job. That's our working with the chairman of the Joint Chiefs and others to ensure globally we're looking at the entire picture and allocating resources at certain times in certain places with a specific end state, with an understanding that eventually we need to make choices that shift to our priority location. I'll note that the border, from our perspective, our border, is not a deviation from that at all. President Trump has made that key from the beginning, securing our skies, our southern border. When you have 21 million people whose intentions you don't know what they are enter your country, we call that an invasion. That's unacceptable, and that's why we've focused on that from day one, and we will use all resources necessary to secure that southern border. Another question was about cyber. It needs to be fully integrated into how we operate. I can't tell you how often Admiral Paparo brings that up, both in hunt forward and defensive, offensive and defensive capabilities, training, working together at the request of allies and partners who seek that capability, and then many of which have capabilities that are a multiplier effect for ours. So it is central to how we look at the world. It has to be in a world of asymmetric threats, in the world of space, in the world of cyber. Those domains are the front lines, especially in the gray zone, asymmetric hybrid warfare scenarios that I discussed and touched on briefly. I think the other question was about how do we operationalize that pivot? You do it by going there, by investing there, by exercising there, by training there, by pouring resources there, by looking at your force posture around the world, which we're reviewing, and a force posture that needs to meet the threats of today and going forward. That's my job. I understand there are a lot of reasons why U.S. troops may be in a certain place, and those are good reasons. Reasons grounded in threats, relationships, alliances, all of which need to be taken into consideration. But if you're looking at it through the lens of America first, not America alone, and peace through strength, practically, we need to be able to review those postures and pivot accordingly. And we try to be open and transparent with our allies and partners in the process. Certainly our friends in Congress as well. Foreign military sales, I believe that was the fourth question. It was touched on capabilities, making sure that the Indo-Pacific does not become a testing ground. That's certainly not our goal. However, we've learned, as so many of you have, from the conflict in Ukraine, that warfare is changing rapidly. It's iterating in real time. And so this idea that we can conduct defense procurement the way we have in the past, waiting months and months and years for the perfect system that delivers 5 years down the road, over time and over budget, it's not possible. So we're working with our partners, not just in the Indo-Pacific, but around the world to rapidly field emerging technologies, which we think makes us more likely to deter adversaries. And then the fifth question was
Europe's role in the region.
Oh, exactly. Yes, a big one. And I think there are understandable reasons why other countries would take a different view. I mentioned it briefly. I think Europe's comparative advantage, powers in Eastern and Western Europe, is defense of that continent. I think investing in those capabilities has a very real deterrent effect on the continent. We welcome that. I've also had a lot of ongoing conversations with our military leadership in the Indo-Pacific, and there is something to be said for the fact that China calculates the possibility and does not appreciate the presence of other countries on occasion or as part of the dynamics or decision-making process. And if that is reflected in their calculus, then that's useful. But we would much prefer that the overwhelming balance of European investment be on that continent 80 years on, so that as we partner there, which we will continue to do, we're able to use our comparative advantage as an Indo-Pacific nation to support our partners here.
Thank you very much. We'll take a few more in a second round, and then we'll wrap up. Can I please first get from Vietnam, Big Tron?
Thank you, Chair. Secretary, so good to see you in Singapore, one member of ASEAN. So my question is about cyber defense. So as you mentioned that cyberspace has been, increasingly important battleground, but the current U.S. government is cutting a lot of initiative on cybersecurity. So from a national defense perspective, are you concerned that the U.S. will be vulnerable to cyber attacks by adversaries?
Thank you very much. And we take from Japan, Ken Jimbo.
Well, thank you very much. Secretary Health, you emphasized the need for more lethal American force. In your vision, how central is the artificial intelligence to achieving that goal? Specifically, what role do you see AI playing in enhancing operational effectiveness, decision-making, or deterrence?
Thank you very much. And we have a question from China, Qi Zhang. Senior Colonel, your microphone is live.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Good morning, Mr. Secretary. You mentioned that allies and partners are important. However, in recent years, when the United States set up multilateral alliances or frameworks in this region, such as Quad and AUKUS, it did not include ASEAN countries. So if there are differences or disputes between U.S. alliances and ASEAN, which side do you choose? Do you support ASEAN centrality? If so, how can you ensure ASEAN centrality in this way? Thank you.
Thank you very much. And we take from the United Kingdom, Sir Tom Beckett. Tom.
Mr. Secretary, thank you. China, it seems to me, has an asymmetric strategic advantage through its dominance of critical mineral refinement and supply. How might this affect the U.S. Goals for your defense industrial base and the production of next-generation military equipment? And how do you intend to neutralize this particular Chinese advantage?
Thank you very much, Tom. Let me take one more, and then we'll close it and let the Secretary respond. If we can please have from Malaysia, Fikri Rahman.
Thank you. It's interesting you mentioned on the economic interest and common sense, right? In this region, I think security and economy is deeply connected. And this region has been anxious of the President Trump's tariff. So how did you offset that? Thank you.
Thank you very much. So again, a rather rich menu for you to get into. Again, the vulnerability to cyber attacks, how AI and other technologies pay into more lethal force posture. And then there's the balancing alliances. You got it, yeah. Over to you.
With the first question, I guess I would just take issue with the premise of the question. Every single day inside the Pentagon, we are not cutting cyber, we're enhancing it, we're enabling it, we're recognizing the centrality and the importance of it. So I would just disagree with that and say that across the spectrum, both how our services train and equip, but also how our COCOMs, our combatant commanders, are looking at the fight, it's central to it. The role of AI, same thing. I've been trying to be very careful about how we engage with industry partners. We're trying to open the doors to non-traditionals. A lot of defense contractors who have not been traditionally part of the conversation, who have commercial capabilities off the shelf, that have open architecture, that can more rapidly field, that have made their own investments and are willing to present capabilities to the Defense Department that we didn't pay for in the first hand, but we are quite important to how we might operate. AI is central to that. I mean, the alliances that embrace the ability for what AI can do inside the common operating picture, in command and control, in rapidly synthesizing intelligence. It's a game changer for not just for us, but for any country that can field it properly and with an understanding of how wielding it makes you faster and more lethal in real time. So AI is something we are focused on a daily basis at the Pentagon and looking to integrate throughout our formations. Appreciate the question from China. I would simply say, and welcome that dialogue and conversation, by the way. I would simply point to the countries we've engaged with here, whether they are a part of ASEAN, whether they are a part of AUKUS, any of those architectures. We are not going to look only inside the confines of how previous administrations looked at this region. I think you saw in my remarks intentionally, we're opening our arms to countries across the spectrum, traditional allies, non-traditional allies, some of which can be overt, others of which are more covert, some of which are near and far, more direct or logistics-oriented, but grounded in mutual self-interest, in respect for those organizations, the capabilities that we want to bring to bear, and the realism of what we can do together. Not promising something in the far future that sounds great on a PowerPoint or at a IISS forum, but honest conversations about brass tacks, hard power, military capabilities that would be needed to be brought to bear. If and when, unfortunately, there were a contingency, which, as I hope I made quite clear, is not something we seek. Critical minerals, I would call that a sort of Operation Warp Speed for us, and for everybody. It's not just the United States. Where we source munitions, critical platforms, is important. And from our Deputy Secretary of Defense throughout our department, it's very important, and we're actually moving out quite rapidly on it. And then the last question on tariffs, I'm happily in the business of tanks, not trade. And I will leave that discussion to the man who knows how to do it best, which is President Trump. Right-sizing relationships and ensuring that our trade is balanced. And I think that's good for us and for all countries when we do that.
Secretary Hegseth, thank you so much. That takes us to the end of our session. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you.
For this session, I think we got a major and comprehensive statement of U.S. policy for the region, which was excellent. And we now have a quick staging break before we go into the next panel. But thank you very much, Mr. Secretary, for joining us today.
dimension.
Here, last. We are delighted to welcome for this plenary three tremendous speakers. General Phan Van Gang, who is the Minister of National Defense of Vietnam. He's also, as it happens, the Vice Chairman of the Vietnamese Central Military Commission. Delighted to have back for the second year in a row Kaja Kallas. She was here last year in her capacity as Prime Minister of Estonia, and she's here today as Vice President of the European Commission and High Representative for Foreign Affairs and Security Policy. And I'm very careful with my counting. I'm delighted to receive for the fourth time at the Shangri-La Dialogue Nakatani-san. His last time here was a decade ago in 2015, but his first time here was in 2002 when we opened the Shangri-La Dialogue. So we're delighted to have him back with us this year, 10 years on from his. And with that, could I please ask General Phan Yang to address the second plenary of this IISS Shangri-La Dialogue. Thank you, sir.
Mr. Chairman, ladies and gentlemen, I would like to thank the Ministry of Defense of Singapore and the International Institute for Strategic Studies for inviting me to attend the 22nd Shangri-La Dialogue. The Shangri-La Dialogue is one of the most prestigious multilateral security forums in the world and the region. Thanks for giving me the opportunity to share my views on ensuring stability in a competitive world, a topic that is very meaningful in the current world context. Distinguished delegates, the world is currently experiencing equal changes. Peace, cooperation, and development remain major trends. Opportunities and challenges are intertwined. Asia-Pacific and the Indian Ocean continue to be dynamically developing regions. The fourth industrial revolution and new breakthroughs in science and technology, especially the AI, are opening up enormous opportunities for developments as well as cooperation in responding to security challenges and global issues. The world is also facing unprecedented difficulties and challenges since the Cold War. Strategic competition among major powers is increasingly fierce, profound, expanding in space and scope, increasing in intensity and confrontation. The risk of armed races and military conflicts is also increasingly tense. The rise of power hegemony ideology and narrow-minded nationalism is challenging international law, and at the same time eroding multilateral institutions and trust in global cooperation. Traditional and non-traditional security challenges are intertwined, increasing the risk of multi-dimensional and multi-form crises, posing many risks, causing unpredictable consequences for the security and development of affected countries. Conflict hotspots around the world continue to evolve in a complex manner. Meanwhile, non-traditional security challenges are increasingly complex. Climate change, natural disasters, epidemics, resource exhaustion, and population aging, etc., are threatening to reverse efforts to implement the UN 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development. A clear demonstration of the severe impacts of natural disasters is the enormous loss of lives and property caused by the earthquake that occurred in late March in Myanmar and Thailand. Let me take this opportunity to express my deepest condolences and trust that with the efforts of the government and people and the joining hands of the international community, the reconstruction of the areas affected by the earthquake will be effectively implemented and the lives of people will soon be stabilized. Vietnam, along with other peace-loving countries in the world, is currently enjoying a peaceful, prosperous, and happy life, confidently moving forward into a new era of prosperous development. However, the reality is that peace and stability are still burning aspirations in many places around the world, areas where conflict and wars have occurred, threatening and taking away human lives and the peace and happiness of the people. Ensuring stability in a competitive world is a prerequisite and indispensable condition for building a world of peace, stability, cooperation, and development for the common interests of nations and peoples, and at the same time, it is an urgent requirement today. Therefore, to ensure stability in the competitive world, I think we need to pay attention to the followings. First, it is necessary to comply with the basic principles of the UN Charter and international law, comply with commitments, respect the equality, independence, rights, sovereignty, and legitimate interests of nations and peoples, regardless of big or small. Consider it the foundation for dealing with and resolving international disputes and disagreements. On the contrary, unilateral and imposed actions will inevitably lead to the suspicion, contradiction, disagreement, and hinder efforts to cooperate in resolving common security challenges, to maintain international peace and security, and develop friendly relations among nations. The UN Charter has clearly defined the basic principles: settling international disputes by peaceful means, renouncing the threat of force or the use of force in international relations. As you know, these are also the basic principles in our independence and self-reliance foreign policy and the foreknows defense policy of Vietnam. Regarding the East Sea, also known as the South China Sea issue, Vietnam consistently and persistently resolved all disagreements by peaceful means in compliance with the 1982 UN UNCLOS 1982, effectively and fully implementing the DOC in the East Sea, wishing to soon build a substantive and effective code of conduct in the East Sea, contributing to maintaining peace and stability, security, safety, freedom of navigation and aviation in the East Sea. Second, there must be goodwill and need for stability to cooperate and develop together. Countries need to have goodwill in their relations and cooperation. Without goodwill, suspicion and misunderstanding can easily arise and simply problems can become complicated. With goodwill, we can turn great issues into important issues into minor issues, and minor issues into no issue. And complex issues can also be openly discussed, satisfactorily negotiated, and simply resolved. This is also the motto of our great President Ho Chi Minh. To gain goodwill, it is necessary to build, strengthen strategic and political trust. There must be no suspicion or misunderstanding to avoid the risk of wrong strategic calculations and actions. Thus, we need to be open, frank, sincere, and transparent. I believe that when countries share transparently about defense and policies and guidelines, we will have trust, goodwill, and complex problems can be solved by peaceful means. Third, strengthen the share of views, constructive dialogue to solve problems, healthy competition, establish and implement effective and practical cooperation mechanisms, both bilaterally and multilaterally. I believe that the Shangri-La Dialogue, the Beijing Sanction Forum, the Moscow Conference on International Security, the Munich Security Conference, and many other security and defense fora in the world are truly strategic fora, creating opportunities for us to share views, exchange, and dialogue, to become closer, more connected, and understand each other better, thereby enhancing trust and more substantive and effective cooperation. As you all know, competition for survival and development is an objective necessity. From a positive perspective, it is a driving force for development. The point is how to compete healthily, respecting mutual interests, not because of strength, weakness, winning, losing, or not because of submission, competing for benefits, by besieging, restraining, harming each other. The result is it will inevitably lead to tension, confrontation, conflict, and be difficult to ensure sustainable peace and stability. The world and the region currently have many cooperation mechanisms. In the future, cooperation mechanisms might be expanded and established. The importance is how to harmonize cooperation mechanisms, not to allow conflicts or contradictions between mechanisms, and to ensure that all mechanisms are directed towards the common goal of contributing to promoting cooperation for mutual development, bringing practical benefits to participating parties without harming the legitimate interests of other countries, contributing contributing to building a peaceful, stable, developed, and prosperous world and region. In its foreign policy, Vietnam is always ready to participate in and support mechanisms and be a responsible member for the purpose of maintaining stability, cooperation, and mutual development in the Asia-Pacific region. ASEAN currently plays a central role in the evolving regional security architecture. Vietnam is always committed to promoting its role as a responsible and active member of ASEAN for its legitimate national interests, and at the same time wishes to actively contribute to ensure peace, stability, and common development. Vietnam hopes that countries will support its efforts to promote ASEAN's central role, enhance its capacities for self-reliance, and contribute to peace, security, and prosperity in the region and the world. Fourth, it is necessary to strengthen international cooperation in addressing non-traditional security challenges. In recent years, while traditional security challenges have not been eliminated, and in some places have even become more complicated, non-traditional security challenges are emerging, becoming increasingly complex and unpredictable. We have not able to forget the COVID-19 pandemic and non-traditional security challenges such as natural disasters, epidemics, climate change, etc., which are posing an urgent need for cooperation and joint response from the entire international community. International cooperation in resolving non-traditional security issues also have a positive impact on cooperation in resolving traditional security challenges. Fifth, the Vietnamese MND always has goodwill, desire, and actively and responsibly participate in initiatives and mechanisms for substantive and effective cooperation with the Ministry of Defense and militaries of other countries to promote cooperation and dialogue in the spirit of respecting the rule of law, respecting differences, unity in diversity for stability, peace, and security. Vietnam persistently implements a foreign policy of independence, self-reliance, multilateralization, and diversification of relations, being a reliable friend and partner and a responsible member of the international community, and effectively contributes to the world political posture, the global economy, and human civilization. This year, Vietnam celebrates the 50th anniversary of national reunification and 80th anniversary of National Day. Being a nation that has experienced countless pains and losses due to wars more than anyone else, we deeply understand the value of maintaining peace, stability, cooperation, and development. And we honestly wish to work with international community. And let us do everything we can do today with the desire to leave future generations not only a better world, but also faith and admiration for the sense of responsibility and wisdom of today's generations. Thank you very much for your kind attention.
General Gang, and in particular for pointing out that while the international rules-based order is perhaps broken, that the regional rules-based order is still a little bit under construction. You remind us that the code of conduct is still being discussed, but not yet settled, and perhaps in the Q&A we can explore more the reasons why that particular element of the regional rules-based order is still not completed. And with that, could I ask the Vice President of the European Commission, High Representative, to address this second plenary. Thank you.
Dear Ministers, it's an honor to share the stage with you, and also thank you to the IISS for organizing this great meeting of the minds. And also inviting me for the second time already. So this year marks 80 years since the end of World War II, when autocratic powers tried to bend the global order to their will and lost. 80 years ago, freedom prevailed. We collectively established the rules-based international system with the United Nations at its core. We developed legal principles to try crimes of atrocity. We established international law to protect territorial integrity. We signed the United Nations Charter. This is a treaty that binds every United Nations member by law. 80 years after the end of World War II, some actors are subverting its very foundation. It is the greatest challenge of our time. 3 points. First, Russia is waging an illegal war of aggression by invading a sovereign state. The UN Charter is very clear. It provides only two legal grounds for the use of force: self-defense and the authorization of force by Security Council in response to a threat to peace, a breach of aggression, or an act of aggression. There are no root causes under international law that allow for the use of force. North Korea directly contributes to the illegal aggression with soldiers, arms, and ammunition. And China says it's neutral, but its dual-use experts are fueling Russia's war. When China and Russia speak of leading together, the change is not seen in 100 years, and of revisions of the global security order, we should all be extremely worried. Back in 2022, former Japanese Prime Minister Kishida warned from this stage that Ukraine today might be East Asia tomorrow. We are over 3 years into the war now. We speak in Europe that Ukraine's defense is our defense, but it is defense of our common security. We have to stop Russia in its tracks. If we don't, all we do is validate the claim that you can just take your neighbor's territory by force. If we don't defend the law, we validate aggression. Second, Europe and Asia also share many other security challenges. On maritime security, we share a commitment to the United Nations Convention on the Law of the Sea. And the EU always speaks out when countries challenge this, including in the South China Sea. We also speak out when tensions escalate in the Taiwan Strait, and we oppose any unilateral attempt to change the status quo, including by force or coercion. And with threats to our critical underwater infrastructure, our security is literally interlinked. In 2023, a Chinese-flagged ship dragged its anchor for over 180 kilometers in the Baltic Sea, damaging gas pipeline and undersea cables. Reckless at best, sabotage at worst. This behavior should be under global scrutiny, as it is in the interest of us all. European and Asian partners should work together to protect our undersea cables, and we should be ready to review existing law to ensure it is fit for this era and can address these challenges. We should also collectively address the challenge of shadow fleets. The European Union has already imposed sanctions and is prepared to take further action in this regard. The European Union's own naval missions have already escorted hundreds of merchant vessels through the Red Sea and repelled Houthi attacks, as well as helped to reduce piracy in the Indian Ocean. When it comes to nuclear weapons, the Non-Proliferation Treaty has meant a safer world for us all. The EU sanctions those in breach of it, international nuclear norms, such as the DPRK, but also works for de-escalation wherever it is possible. Cyber, was mentioned many times here before, is another domain of unrestricted competition that also knows no borders. Recently, Chinese state-backed actors were behind a malicious cyber campaign against Czechia. These attacks are unacceptable. These are the examples of the European Union standing up for the international law because it protects us and everybody else. International law is the best deterrence for all countries, large and small. The rules-based global order is also the only guarantee for our safety and self-determination. When might replaces right, no border is safe. In the area of major instability, this system is more important than ever. If anything, this is the era that it was built for. But we have to enforce the rules and reinforce them if need. Third, those who breach international law are often the same as those who see international relations as a zero-sum game. It is not. Our strategy for the Indo-Pacific is the exact opposite of this. It is about building strong partnerships in our mutual interest. All of us are always better off when we work together. The EU offers reliable and credible partnerships. You can trade with us, innovate with us, and lead the green transition with us. We are the world's largest trading bloc, a top 3 investment partner to most countries in the region, and our power is not only economic. In the face of these geopolitical challenges, the European Union has shifted gear, reimagined our own paradigm as peace project backed up with hard defense. We are making up to 800 billion euro available for investments in defense, and we are fast becoming a global security partner too. We have agreed security and defense partnerships with Japan and the Republic of Korea, for example. We would like to deepen our security relations with India and Australia and many others as well. Europe has a long-term strategic commitment to this region. Esteemed guests, the World War that ended 80 years ago this year came at too high cost for humanity to throw away the achievements we have made. UN Charter and the international law, far from abstract ideas, are the best tools we have to protect peace and hold aggressors accountable. They are the bedrock of stability. So we stand firm against those who ignore the rules and ensure accountability for those who break them. We throw our weight behind partnerships. If you reject unilateralism, bullying, and aggression, and instead choose cooperation, shared prosperity, and common security, the European Union will always be by your side. Thank you.
High Representative, thank you very much, particularly for at the beginning reminding us that there are no root causes that in international law allow for the use of force, for also reminding us that there is a little bit of an unwelcome tilt of some Asian countries towards Europe, and then concluding with the efforts that the European Union itself is making in defense diplomacy and building defense partnerships in this region. Nakatani-san, the floor is yours. Thank you very much, sir.
Good morning, Dr. Chipman, honored guest, everyone. I'm Gen Nakatani, Minister of Defense of Japan. I will now speak in Japanese. I invite you to switch your channel to interpretation, please.
Dr. Chipman, and I'd like to thank. It is also I'd also like to extend my deepest appreciation to IISS and the government of Singapore for graciously hosting this distinguished assembly. It is my honor to share this stage with General Zhang, Minister of National Defense of Vietnam, and Her Excellency Ms. Kaya Kallas, the High Representative of the European Union. This marks my fourth opportunity to participate in Shangri-La Dialogue as Japan's Minister of Defense. My first attendance was at the inaugural session in 2002, where I voiced my fervent hope that this gathering would become the preeminent and regular annual forum for defense ministers across our region to continue our dialogue. And through that way we could grow. Today, nearly a quarter century later, the Shangri-La dialogue has indeed become a beacon of hope in turbulent times, a forum that inspires us to forge a new chapter of success story for the Indo-Pacific. For this, I offer my profound respect and gratitude. Today, our region and the broader international community confront challenges of an unprecedented magnitude. The need for frank and open dialogue among defense leaders has never been greater. As a participant since the very beginning, I can attest there is no forum more fitting than the Shangri-La dialogue for such vital discussions. And I firmly believe this. Today, competition among nations is intensifying, growing ever more complex and extending across domains. And this is happening very rapidly. In these times, it is incumbent upon us to address the root causes. At the heart of our current predicament lies the erosion of trust in the international order that has underpinned decades of stability. This is especially evident in the realm of defense. First, the rules-based international order is being dangerously hollowed out. Russia's aggression against Ukraine stands as a flagrant violation of Article 2(4) of the United Nations Charter. In the South China Sea, the Arbitral Tribunal's award, which is final and binding, has been openly disregarded. Such actions threaten to undermine the very efficacy of international law, the bedrock of a peaceful and stable world. Second, we witness a blatant disregard for accountability. In the South China Sea, a nation that once pledged not to pursue militarization has rapidly reversed course over disputed features through the reclamation of features and coral reefs. In this region, we see a rapid and opaque military buildup by a nation, including nuclear capabilities lacking transparency and an increase in provocative military activities. These developments erode trust and confidence among defense authorities. Third, there is an abdication of responsibility for the international public good. States that do not share our values and interests are prepared to undermine the very foundations of our societies and economies for their own gain. State-sponsored cyber attacks are on the rise, and repeated damage to undersea cables suspected that it involved by certain countries. These have had serious implications in the field relevant to defense. Yet, even amid these daunting realities, we are witnessing encouraging developments. Permit me to highlight 5 points. First, regional frameworks are being revitalized. ASEAN's expanding role in security is particularly important, as is the continued convening of this dialogue, Shangri-La dialogue, which draws defense ministers from around the globe. Second, the Japan-US alliance, and of course Japan itself, remains a steadfast cornerstone of peace and prosperity in the region and the world. I reaffirmed this directly with the US Secretary of Defense, Hegseth, during his recent visit to Japan at the end of March. I've already talked with him directly. With this robust alliance, Japan will continue to fulfill its responsibilities for the prosperity of the region and the international community, rapidly reinforcing our capabilities as outlined in our national security strategy. Third, countries that share common values and interests are deepening defense cooperation and creating new value together. The unprecedented collaboration among Japan, the United States, Australia, and the Philippines is a testament to this trend. We are contributing to the region. Fourth, there's a growing awareness of the dangers of excessive dependence on nations that do not share values and interests. Ensuring strategic autonomy is essential for stable defense relationships. Fifth, interregional cooperation is flourishing. European nations and NATO are deepening their engagement in the Indo-Pacific, and it is now widely recognized that the security of Euro-Atlantic and Indo-Pacific region is inseparable. This is a common consensus. I have something very important to say. Some may question whether these developments are truly encouraging, but let me be clear, they are. I would like to clarify the principles that should be once again brought to the fore. Let me clarify. Firstly, because they are grounded in a shared spirit, a collective commitment to restoring the rules-based order, strengthening accountability, and advancing the international public through cooperation, openness, inclusivity, and transparency. And this would further advance the international public good. Secondly, there is a shared determination among defense authorities to take a broad and panoramic view of the Indo-Pacific, to generate a certain amount of synergy through enhanced cooperation, and to create new values and benefits for the entire region. In these challenging times, it is imperative that all defense authorities in the Indo-Pacific reaffirm these points. The future of our region depends upon it. Today, I propose that we call this emerging direction the spirit of ocean, O-C-E-N, O-C-E-A-N. It's the spirit of ocean, one cooperative effort among nations. Perspective for the Indo-Pacific. This spirit signifies that from an Indo-Pacific perspective, nations with shared values and interests unite to create powerful synergies through cooperative efforts. And by having one symbolizes the whole. This term also symbolizes our vision of the Pacific and the Indian Oceans as one, a continuous and interconnected expanse. Once again, there is no better place than the Shangri-La dialogue to reaffirm this spirit and mentality. Japan has always embodied the spirit of ocean, O-C-A-N. We will continue to take initiative and remain a partner of choice for all nations committed to cooperation and collaboration, working together for a free and open Indo-Pacific in the field of defense. That is the kind of partner we aim to be. First, Japan is strengthening its cooperation with countries that share this spirit. This year, I visited Indonesia and the Philippines, where we reaffirmed our shared commitment. With India, we are making tangible progress, and we, under the Japan-India Defense Cooperation in Indo-Pacific, including cooperation in Southeast Asia, and we will continue to deepen defense cooperation across operations. And we will continue to cooperate across operations, capacity building, logistics, equipment and technology, as well as disaster relief and humanitarian assistance with as many countries as possible based on shared values and interests. Second, we will continue to support and collaborate with existing frameworks and also to promote adherence to established rules. In order to uphold ASEAN unity and centrality, Japan will remain a partner of choice for ASEAN nations, supporting efforts to strengthen defense capabilities, including in non-traditional domains under the Vientiane Vision 2.0 and Jasmine. We will also work together with all of you to promote the adherence to and the strengthening of various rules, including Qs. Third, in order to complement these initiatives, we will further strengthen collaboration among Japan, the United States, India, and Australia, as well as trilateral and multilateral partnerships, and including with NATO and other key organizations beyond the region. Through these multi-layered efforts, Japan will continue to create new values for the peace and prosperity of the Indo-Pacific, working hand in hand with all nations that share our values. And in that way, we will build a new success story. Now, I would like to say it is a moment for all of us, the participating nations at the Shangri-La Dialogue, to unite in the spirit of Ocean, OCAN, through continuous dialogues, not to allow the erosion of rules-based order, but to restore it, not to ignore accountability, but to uphold it, not to undermine the international public good, but to advance it. Together with all of you, I am determined to create a new story, and Japan pledges to remain at the very heart of these efforts. Thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Nakatani-san, and in particular for asserting so generously the centrality of the Shangri-La Dialogue, as it were, in defense diplomacy for this region. I picked up also your point that while many of us are worried about the invasion of territory, there is, of course, a concern in the South China Sea about the creation of territory that might be interpreted also as not entirely compliant with a rules-based order. You, like Kazakalas, made reference to the threat to undersea cabling. I might just advertise that on page 100 of our Asia-Pacific regional assessment, there is a map of all the undersea cabling in the Indo-Pacific region, and it does show quite how much is at stake there. And finally, I thank you very much for your ocean call, which is, in a sense, a call for cooperative strategic autonomy that echoes in part some of the words we heard from our keynote speaker, President Macron, last night. And with that, we'll turn to the floor for about 6 or 7 questions and points before we return to the panel for their comments and answers. And first, from Indonesia, one of our young leaders, Rati Kabinawa, your microphone is on.
Okay, good morning, and thank you for the opportunity. My questions will be pointed directly to His High Excellency Kaja Kallas. Ukraine, you mentioned that Ukraine today may be East Asia tomorrow. What can East Asian countries learn from Europe to prevent what happened in Europe from happening in the East Asia region, such as across the Taiwan Strait? And what can European countries do to help de-escalate any tension we have right now in the East Asia region? Thank you.
Thank you. And from the UK and the IISS, Robert Ward.
Thank you, John. A question for Minister Nakatani. You talked about Japan building defense cooperation with partners. One example of this has been the deepening cooperation between Japan and the ROK over the past 2 years or so, which has been a welcome boost for regional stability. With South Korea due to have a new government in days, where do you see the most promising areas for Japan-ROK security cooperation going forward? Thank you.
Thank you. And from Myanmar, Isabella Aung.
Thank you very much. My question is about Vietnam. Good morning, General. First of all, I would like to sincerely thank Vietnam for providing invaluable support to Myanmar in the aftermath of the devastating earthquake. My question is that how will Vietnam successfully maintain goodwill when dealing with defense and security issues in our region, where many nations are becoming increasingly more militant and distrustful? Thank you.
Thank you. And from France, Céline Pajon.
Thank you. I have two quick questions, one for the High Representative. President Macron referred yesterday to a kind of association or joining of the EU and the CPTPP. Can you add some word about the prospect for that? And to Minister Nakatani, you referred to the many partnerships that Japan is developing in the region. I remember that Prime Minister Ishiba once referred a prospect for Asian NATO, and also recently there has been also a kind of idea about collective defense pact in the regions. What is your assessment regarding the relevance of such schemes? Thank you.
Thank you very much. And from Japan, Akita Hiroyuki.
Thank you very much. My question is to each panelist. Thank you for illustrating a very dangerous landscape in the world. Then my question is, what is the worst case scenario that you are preparing for? Could you share with it with not like impressionist painting, but more like a portrait painting, a clear scenario that you are worried most? Thank you.
Thank you very much. And from Thailand, Suraichi Suriai.
Thank you, Chair. My question is rather on humanitarian front, not so much on the security front, but my question is for Excellency Callas and Minister Nakatani. As you know, the United States has withdrawn majority of its humanitarian support to countries and organizations around the world, and it's having a significant impact on global stability. So perhaps maybe you can share whether and how Japan and the European Union are planning to assist countries and people suffering from tremendous humanitarian needs in the absence of the United States.
Thanks very much. I'll take two more, and then I'll come back to the panel and some tactical warning. I'll ask them to speak in the reverse order from which they initially spoke from the podium. So Nakatani-san first, then Kazakalas, and then General Gang. But please first have two more. Richard Lloyd Parry from the UK.
Thank you. A question for Representative Callas. This morning, Secretary Hegseth referred to the tough love extended by the United States towards Europe. And I wanted to know, is that how it feels? Is that how the attitude of the United States feels to you? And if so, would you agree that Europe needed a dose of toughness from the United States?
And from Australia, Roy Metcalf.
Thank you to all panelists, but particularly to General Zan from Vietnam. Look, clearly a major conflict in this region would have devastating impacts for all of our interests. How would each of you work with and encourage ASEAN partners to pursue conflict prevention with genuine urgency and effectiveness?
Thank you very much. So if Nakatani-Jen could take the questions to him.
韓国は国際社会のさまざまな
Well, for Japan, we have partnership with Korea. Korea is a very important partner for us. As a defense minister, I've visited Korea three times, and I've had a ministers' meeting with our Korean counterpart. Looking at the security environment, it's becoming very complex, especially for Japan and Korea, Japan, US, Korea. This partnership is very important in every aspect. The presidential election is taking place in ROK at the moment. Whatever government will be emerging, such alliance between Japan and Korea, Japan, Korea, US, this importance will not change, and bilateral, trilateral strengthening of security is very important. And regarding Asian NATO, there was a question on Asian NATO, and I have actually talked about the spirit of ocean today. And this actually is encouraging defense authority to have a panoramic view, a broad view about Indo-Pacific region by the defense authorities. This reconfirms that attitude. And regarding Asian NATO, LDP is now discussing this matter within, LDP, and Japan will continue to look at this resiliency, sustainability. We need to enhance these two aspects, inclusivity, and we need to have an understanding by the other countries. We need to coordinate with the other countries to win their understanding. In any case, we would like to have a panoramic, broad view of this Indo-Pacific region and to have a good cooperation. That idea will not change.
And lastly, for humanitarian aid, this includes Myanmar, Bangladesh. If there's something that the government cannot do, we have the NGOs working a lot towards carrying goods and to support medical aid. And also with the recent earthquake, I noticed that a lot of organizations on the field from Japan, a lot of young people are there out to support and provide relief. The government is also supporting these people, so to that end we will be assisting humanitarian aid.
Thank you. First, I have to correct that this Ukraine today might be East Asia. Tomorrow was former Japanese Prime Minister Kishida who said it from this stage. I think what it says is that our security is very much interlinked, and what we have to do for not the worst case scenarios happening is that we really need to defend the international law, because that says it all. That is the umbrella that actually protects especially the smaller states. What we have to do on our side, we are building alliances and defense and security partnerships. We are with like-minded countries and trying to find new ways of cooperation to keep this always in mind, because the cooperation is super important. We can only address these big global concerns if we act together, and then we are strong. And then, European Union is a top 3 trading partner for many countries here, and of course we are also willing to build on that more and explore our possibilities to find new ways of doing also economic trade, because we are in this situation where economic alliance is very much interlinked with security, really. And I think again, if we think about big global challenges, then we can address them if we act together. Now, what is the worst case scenario? And to build or to paint this picture, like you said, a portrait, a very concrete portrait, I think it's I don't think it's really useful. If to go to a very, very worst case scenario is that, the world where we actually have rules, how we, work together with countries, but how we also respect the borders of countries, how these principles are acting in practice. If that world doesn't work anymore, then we have a world where might makes right, and that is the worst case scenario. To be a very, very general, not pointing out any concrete countries, but I see clearly that there are these partnerships built also on the other side to show that maybe the world is turning, the powers are shifting, and that's why I think if we respect the values, we should also stick together. But the worst case scenario is that this world really crumbles, and then is everybody on their own. Neighbors will go for their neighbors' territory just because they can. There will be a lot of conflicts all around the world because all the aggressors or would-be aggressors in the world see this opportunity. Okay, it is now open for everybody, and that is extremely dangerous, especially for the small countries in the world. I just remind you that there was a Belgian prime minister who said that there are only two types of countries in the world: small countries and those who haven't realized that they are small countries yet. So this is important. And then on humanitarian aid, 42% of the whole development aid in the world is given by European Union or European Union countries. And just to remind you that only 16% of the world's GDP is Europe. So actually we are doing the biggest share. Of course, when US is withdrawing its aid, it leaves a big gap, and it's clear that we can't fill the void by our means only. And that's why we have had discussions of really strategizing and really, seeing where we put our efforts to, because we can't do it all, and we really need partnerships here as well. But saying that, we are there for our partners, and we are not withdrawing. We are the reliable, the credible, and predictable partner for all our countries that we work with. But at the same time, I think what is very important in this geopolitical shift is also to understand all those countries that we are helping. We also have worries. We also have interest. And that's why we also ask from you and all those countries that we help to cooperate with us when it comes to these big shifts. And then the tough love question. It's love, nevertheless, so it's better than no love. But I think, and when I was listening to the speech, I felt like now the Indo-Pacific is also getting a bit of tough love. But what I want to say again is that I think it's extremely important that of course we are doing our share, and maybe also Europe needed some, waking up. There are different countries in Europe, and some of us have realized long time ago that we need to invest in defense, because you need to invest in defense when you don't need it, when you actually have peacetime, because when you need it, it's too late. Now other countries have realized that as well, and that is a good thing. We are doing more. But what I want to stress is that the security of Europe and the security of Indo-Pacific is very much interlinked. If you think that you can just focus on one region because it doesn't concern you, then I think it is on the wrong, you are on the wrong track, because we see North Korean soldiers already operating in Ukraine. We see the ammunition given. We see that 80% of the dual-use goods that are necessary for the war machine of Russia are coming from China. So these things are very much interlinked. So if there were some very strong messages in the U.S. Secretary of Defense speech regarding China, I think again, if you are worried about China, you should be worried about Russia and reaction to what Russia is doing, because it's already showing that if we are serious there, then we can also be serious in other security theaters. Thank you.
Thank you very much. General Yang?
Well, thank you very much for your questions from the audience. Let me share with you 3 points. First, the Myanmar delegate, let me firstly thank you very much for thanking the Vietnam People's Army to participate in the HADI mission when earthquake occurred in Myanmar. And the very consistent policy of Vietnam is not to interfere into the other nations' affairs and respect the self-determination of other countries. And within ASEAN, we have the 5-point consensus with regard to Myanmar, and we do look forward and hope the progress with very tangible results. And I think that the top priority is to ensure peace and stability and approach a dialogue to seek the long-term solutions with the focus of our people. And recently, Vietnam sent our forces to help Myanmar to resolve the consequences of the earthquake in March 2025. And this is the desire of Vietnam with regard to the peace and stability in Myanmar. And the second point about Japan's delegate, about the worst scenario to us. What is the worst scenario and how we can prepare for that scenario? I think it's about unhealthy competition and the disagreement in terms of perspective that lead to violence and forces. And this will bring no goods to either side. So I do hope that we will prepare and agree in terms of perspective that we resolve all the disagreement by peaceful means on the basis of international laws and the commitments, as well as the regional and international commitments and principles, so that we can resolve all the differences and disputes. Third point, about the mechanisms of cooperation and our perspective. You can see that there are nowadays a lot of mechanisms for cooperation, both at the region and the world, as we can witness from the morning presentations. And recently, there emerges several architectures and mechanisms of cooperation, even the new one. And it's a truth that there is a lack of harmony, needless to say, the contradictions, or the gathering of forces among those mechanisms. And this is so worrisome. And our view is that we welcome all the mechanisms for cooperation for the mutual benefits and in line with international and regional principles and laws for the legitimate interests of the parties and not to harm the interests of the third or other parties. Thank you very much.
For 4 or 5 questions and comments, and then we'll come back to the panel to conclude at 11 o'clock exactly. But from Ukraine and the IISS, Maria Sagina.
Thank you, John. 2 questions. One is for Nakatani-san. Japan signaled that it is willing to join NATO security assistance and training for Ukraine headquartered at the U.S. base in Germany. What lessons does Japan seek to learn from the war in Ukraine that can be applicable to Japanese defense capabilities? And the second one to High Representative Kallas. You mentioned the role of sanctions in degrading Russia's war in Ukraine and how the 2 theaters are interconnected. How does the EU plan to extend, maintain, and potentially strengthen its sanctions against Russia, given a fragile unanimity within the EU, China's involvement in supplying dual-use goods to Russia, but also a divergent transatlantic sanctions policy? Thank you.
Thank you very much. And from Cambodia, Rakmi Him.
Thank you, Dr. Chipman. questions. One is to High Representative Kallas and Minister Nakitana. You have been talking about what Japan and EU prepare to do with the region on security front. In this context, amid the decline of rule-based international order and international law, what do EU and Japan expect from ASEAN members individually and ASEAN collectively to work together on defending the international law in place while stepping up security cooperation in concrete terms? And my second question to High Representative Kallas specifically, how do you see the end of the war in Ukraine, and how would such an end mean for the global order? Thank you.
Thank you very much. And from the UK and IISS, James Hackett.
Thank you, John. This is to High Representative Kallas. There was a question earlier in the previous session about critical raw materials. Now, the EU has developed a number of partnerships to secure access as part of what's called raw materials diplomacy. In this region, I think agreement is only with Australia so far. So as the EU looks to secure its sources of supply, what are your plans for critical materials cooperation with other Asian states?
And from the Philippines, Robert Joseph Medillo.
Thank you for the opportunity. My question is for High Representative Kallas. In light of China's increasing economic influence, or if I may say inducements across different regions in the world, and its recent history of economic coercion practice for strategic and geopolitical concessions, how does the EU view China's growing economic influence over the Southeast Asian region? And is there a conscious plan or effort from the EU to provide a more attractive alternative for our region to lessen dependence on China and thus give us more agency to negotiate with China on strategic and geopolitical issues? Thank you.
From the US, Colin Clark.
My question is for all of you. It is, what single policy achievement could the United States achieve that would really alter events in this region?
And from Indonesia, Yasmin Afina.
Thank you very much. As an international lawyer, it's refreshing to hear a lot of emphasis on the UN Charter and the value of international law. I had a question on the role of ASEAN and the wider Indo-Pacific region in upholding international and multilateralism in an era where major powers are questioning the credibility and the value of international law, particularly in the light of the recognition that emerging technologies such as artificial intelligence may have deep security and destabilizing implications. Thank you very much.
And from India, Garima Mohan.
Good morning. My question is also for HRVP Kallas. You very clearly outlined the linkages between European security and Indo-Pacific security. However, Secretary Hegseth this morning said Europe should rather focus on security on its own continent, not in this region. Practically speaking, can you outline how you would ensure that resources are available and allocated for your Indo-Pacific strategy and partnerships while you focus more and more on European defense and security? Thank you.
And from Singapore, Ming Li Yong.
Hi, everyone. Thank you for your comments. I was thinking about the human security angle when we're thinking about peace, prosperity, and stability for the Indo-Pacific region. So my question to all of you would be, what role can non-state actors play in these partnerships? What kind of cooperation and partnerships can be established with non-state actors, such as civil society, the private sector, and also researchers or academia? Thank you.
Thank you. And from the IISS, Fenella McGarty.
Thank you, John. My question is for High Representative Kallas. So you mentioned the defense and security agreements between the EU and Japan and South Korea. Can you perhaps talk to the dialogues and the concrete outcomes that have already emerged from these agreements that might not already have done so? And perhaps will this form the template for the potential agreements for other countries in the region? Thank you.
And again from Cambodia, Sotiarak Pu.
Yeah, thank you, moderator. I would like to address two questions, one to the Minister of
National Defense of Vietnam, and to Her Excellency High Representative from the Foreign Affairs and Security from the EU. For Vietnam, the long and difficult process of drafting the COC exposed the gap between ASEAN and China. That's affect the claimant state, particularly Vietnam. In your opinions, in Vietnamese view, why does it take so long, in your opinion, and why, and if and when the COC is agreed or signed, will that be binding according to international law? My question with the representative from the EU with regard to the world order that we talk about, or the international, particularly the world order that's underpinned by the international law. The institutions that draft the international, in this case, for example, the UN, is not effective in addressing hard security issues or hard issues around the world. In your view, how the EU intended to assist the UN system or any system that you see fit, the multilateral system that can ensure the effectiveness of the international law? Thank you.
Thank you very much. I'll take 3 more questions, and then my usual tactical warning. This time we'll seek a first response from the Minister of Defense of Vietnam, then Nakatani Jen, and we'll end with Kazakalas, not least because so far the score is that there are a few more questions to you, but I'm sure you'll end precisely at 11 o'clock, and I'll give you the time to do so. From Japan, Ryo Aizawa.
Yes, I'm Ryo Aizawa from Japan. A question to Minister Nakatani. I would like to question about the difference between FOIP and ocean. So can we understand FOIP as Japan's broader regional vision, and ocean as a practical slogan for collective regional action to uphold the stability in this region? I feel this distinction helps clarify Japanese approach. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And from the U.S. and the IISS, Paul Freoli.
Thank you, John. My question is directed at all of the plenary speakers. Last night, President Emmanuel Macron stated that the countries of Europe and countries of the Asia-Pacific have a collective interest in strategic autonomy. So does this concept to you make sense as a common goal from your perspective? And more specifically to Nakatani-san and General Van Van Gang, what capabilities are you most prioritizing acquiring in the next 5 years that will enable your countries to act more independently and with greater autonomy in defense issues? Thank you.
Thank you very much. And finally, from Brunei, Mohammed Hazwan Mohammed.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairperson. So I work in defense education, and I have a question for the whole panel. My question is, what advice would you give future defense professionals in order for them to better prepare for future security challenges? Thank you very much.
Well, thank you very much. We have 13 minutes to conclude, and may I ask first General Gang if he could address the questions to him.
Cảm ơn các quý vị đã có những câu hỏi.
For questions to me and to all of us, I would like to touch base with the questions from the delegates from Indonesia. Indonesia is the biggest countries in ASEAN. So ASEAN now has 10 countries, and in the coming time, if we could have Timor-Leste, we would have 11 members. So ASEAN has the very principle of the consensus. So in developing our economy as an emerging economy, we have to obey the international laws. What level of development we have to adhere to the international laws so that we can deal with all the development issues on our way. For the questions from Singapore asking about the non-state actors role, I think that each country would have the national laws and also the international laws, and also the international commitment that we adhere to among the 3-4 countries or many countries. But one thing that I would say that non-state actors have to adhere to obey to these laws so that it can maximize its roles of development that it involved in. For the questions from Cambodia, delegates of COC with regard to the durations and the time when we can sign and whether it is binding or not binding, I think not COC is the consensus between ASEAN and China. And ASEAN countries have to study, especially in its role as an independent state. We have countries in ASEAN without the sea. COC is all about the East Seas or South China Sea. So all the countries in ASEAN will have to study about its roles in the COC, the impacts of its countries on COC. So more time when we have to study the COC, we will have more effectiveness. And I'm sure that COC must be binding so that we can have the principle to deal with all the issues, or in other words, it is marine borders. I think we can sign now, because now it's ripe. From now to last day of 2025 or maybe 2026, we can sign, because we really want to have NCOCs to be effective and efficiencies and impactful so that we can deal with all the differences and disputes at sea in a more effective way. Thank you.
ウクライナの支援ですが、
So we're working with the Ukraine Minister Umerov, and we are continuing to support Ukraine, and of course this is a monetary support, relief, and also we're providing equipment. This is including vehicles and protective gear, medical supplies, and all these assets that we are able to provide, we are sending to them. The third point is about landmine removal. This is in a third country such as Poland. We are providing training on removing landmines to the Ukraine personnel. And for medical support, we have a self-defense force hospital in Japan, and we have some patients from Ukraine soldiers there to treat their cases. Japan is not a country that has many refugees previously. However, for Ukrainian refugees, we have welcomed them, and we are supporting for them to set up their lives in Japan. And as for education, we have lots of volunteers to take care of the Ukrainian children and support some mental support to the mothers, the Ukrainian mothers who are now living in Japan. And about ocean, so it's now a very complicated situation, so we do need to set back and look at the Indo-Pacific situation, and to that end we can further enhance multilateral partnership and cooperation. And to expand this and to advance this, just as I was mentioning, that the spirit, of course, there's 3 points, as I've already mentioned. One is to continue with dialogue, and then rules-based order, and accountability, and then in international domain, we'll advance the cooperation. With free and open Indo-Pacific, so we have been suggesting this concept of free and open Indo-Pacific. This new ocean, OCAN, is something that we can also apply to free and open Indo-Pacific, and so I think it's very important.
questions, and I can't really answer very short. Let's try to do this. First, on sanctions. Yes, we are working on the next package, and of course on the rollover of sanctions as well. I mean, seeing that sanctions actually work when we see the intelligence of how the Russian economy is doing in reality, then they are working, and we are hitting a point where the warehouses have been depleted, so we will see the effect that the sanctions have on supply chains. And we also, I think it's clear for everybody that Ukraine has agreed to unconditional ceasefire already 2 months ago, more than 2 months ago, whereas Russia is not. It takes 2 to 1 peace, it only takes 1 to 1 war, and that is why we need to put more pressure on Russia so that they would also want peace. And there, in America, there is the proposal prepared by Senators Graham and others, which is also very strong sanctions on Russia. But of course, we want to, we are waiting for the U.S. reactions really to put more pressure on Russia. Then on how I see the end of war in Ukraine, it's clearly right now, as I said, as Russia does not want war, want peace, then it's clear that whoever has more stamina wins the war as well. So there are different outcomes, and of course it is clear that Ukraine has to agree what they can agree with Russia. But I think it is important that it has implications for all of us. If the outcome of the war is that Russia just gets to walk away what they attacked and took, not in accordance with the international law. And why I say this is important, because that is then, if we say, for example, of course, one is the situation on the battlefield, and the other is really recognizing this as Russian territory. I bring you one example. When we were occupied by Russia and Soviet Union for 50 years, most of the countries in the world didn't recognize us being part of Soviet Union, and that meant a great deal. So if you say that actually you recognize and say that fine, they take the territories that they have conquered, then you say that it is okay to breach the international law and take by force what you want. And this is dangerous, like I say, to everybody. No border is safe then. Then on the critical raw materials, I think we are also approaching our partner countries, and we see this willingness to cooperate with us as well, because EU is not seen as a threat, and we come with those elements like we actually care for the people on the ground and the nature as well there. So that is why we are a good partner for those countries, and we are developing our relationship and partnerships in this regard even further. Now, on the Chinese growing economic influence, I think this is a super important point. China's GDP has surpassed 70% of the United States GDP, and economically, they have 2 times more manufacturing power than US has, for example. Technologically, China dominates everything from the electric vehicles to 4th generation nuclear. And of course, militarily, China has the largest navy and shipbuilding capacity that is much bigger than anybody else. So I think very often we have regarded alliances as only security alliances. But I think we are in this point where we need to look that actually economic alliances can act as a military deterrent as well. So I think we need to really cooperate with like-minded partners on innovation, on coordination regarding technology, regarding the AI, regarding different tools, and really see that these kind of alliances to actually counter also growing Chinese influence are in the benefit of everybody, that those who really respect the rules that we have for trading practices, for example, that we stick together. And there, I think no country alone, not the big powers, not the smaller ones, can do it alone. We have to really, again, come down and respect the rules there that we have all agreed. Then on the dialogues, security and defense partnership dialogues, very concrete point, cybersecurity. In the previous panel, it was raised several times. I mean, cybersecurity is something that everything is interlinked. I mean, if you think back 20 years ago, hospitals, for example, had to worry only about, some drug addict coming and stealing the morphine. But now the security risk for the hospitals is the cybersecurity. So there is also, a point where we need to see that international law also applies in cyberspace. And this is one of the very concrete dialogues that we have with our partners under security and defense partnerships. On UN not being effective on security concerns, addressing security concerns. I think if you look at history, then every time that there are, big international crises, and we are definitely in one of those moments where there are big international geopolitical shifts, we have also together developed the international law further. And why I say this is that I think we are in a point where the UN Charter is good. The principles that we have all agreed are good. But what it lacks in terms of security is the accountability part, that it has to be more automatic in a sense that, you have the real risk. If you breach the international law, what really happens? And therefore, I think we need to develop the international law further, aside also the issues regarding the international financial architecture that needs to be developed further. So what we can do together is focus on also the reforms there, because I don't see that we also have any other tools in the international fora where we are all together, and that's why we shouldn't cast the United Nations aside, but we should concentrate and use this crisis to develop the cooperation further and address those issues that haven't been addressed. And there were many other questions that I didn't answer, but maybe we have possibilities to do that later again. And advice on future defense professionals. I think what we all have to do is to be more agile and really responding to the challenges we have right now, to the rapidly changing world, and really keeping the values at its core, while really adjusting ourselves to the world changing around us. Thank you.
Many thanks. When the world moves quickly, agility is vital. Thank you very much to our panel for a tremendous second plenary session. And we'll see you all again at 11:30 for the third plenary. Thank you very much.